Welcome to Women Lead TV, brought to you by Connected Women of Influence. I'm your host, Kimberly Centera of Workplace Transformation Begins With Us. And we are so excited to have with us Karith Foster today, who is going to talk to us about a new approach to diversity. And Karith is an acclaimed TEDx speaker, TV and radio show personality, a leading lecturer at Stanford, and the founder of Inversity Solutions. So, welcome. We're so excited to have you today, Karith.
Thank you so much for having me, Kimberly.
So, I'm really excited to talk about this subject of diversity. Obviously, as a business owner, it's top of the mind for me. It's something that I want to understand. There's so many different philosophies out there, and I was really intrigued by some of your material that actually equated diversity to division. And I know you have an amazing story that brought you to this point, and we could spend all of our time just really talking about that. But share with us how you came to this idea of looking at diversity and inclusion differently and why this is such a passionate subject for you.
Absolutely. So, in a nutshell, my background is quite varied. I have a degree in broadcast journalism, which led me to work at a local and national level within television. I was there for the startup of the TV show The View. I always thought from even a young age that what I wanted to do was bring the world together. I wanted to be a conduit for people to connect and to learn and to realize that we have more in common than we don't. And I was kind of thrust into this diversity work, if you will, when I was given an on air position with Don Imus to quote unquote diversify his staff and have a national dialogue about race and racism after his unfortunate disparaging remarks that he made about the Rutgers women's basketball team. And it was there that I really thought, wait a second, we've been doing diversity for decades now. Diversity programming, diversity workshops. Why does it feel like 2 steps forward, 10 steps back? And the more I really looked at it, the more I realized that it's not diversity that's bad. It's the way we've been approaching it. And even the root of the word diversity is DIV, right? Think of the words that start with that: division, divide, divorce. And yet we're using the word diversity to try to bring people together. Now we know what it should mean. It should be a celebration of all that we are, who we are, our identity, what we bring to the table. But unfortunately, the way that we've been utilizing that term and has been really a predominant messaging through these programs and keynotes and workshops is we're in categories. And if you don't know what's happening with the person in that category, you're bad, you're wrong, you're evil. And it's not, that's not how we should be approaching it. This should be about, yes, people's experiences. We should be expanding the definition of diversity because true diversity isn't just about, people who are in marginalized groups. It's not just about someone's skin color, their ethnicity, their gender, their sexuality. True diversity is about who we all are and what we bring to the table, our background, our heritage, again, our identity. So I came up with the idea of inversity to play on the celebration of the good things that we are. But let's shift the focus from what separates and divides us to what is it that we have in common? How can we be truly inclusive of one another? But most importantly and powerfully, how can we become introspective, right? Meaning understanding your value and worth so you can then see it in someone else. Because so much of this work has been about changing people from the outside in, right? You need to change the way that you think. You need to change the way that you speak. You need to change everything about yourself without being able to even look inside and say, okay, how would I feel if I were in this position or scenario? And again, separating us, furthering the divide, causing more polarization, which is why there's such upheaval now with people who want to come together, but they're torn about how to do it.
You know what? I love that you're talking about it from the standpoint of connection and people being more genuine, maybe, and relating to each other because you know there's more that brings us together than makes us separate. And even when I talk to people about this subject, it's a divisive subject. Some people, a lot of people react, and some very strongly, because I think in some settings they don't know what to do. They don't, what is okay anymore? How do we respond? And so it's almost like you just don't want to deal with it, or you're just checking a box. And if you're just checking a box, then how is that going to be productive? How is that going to have the lasting change? Because I think it hasn't changed, right? Or it hasn't changed the way that we want. So what do we want to do differently? And where do you think this starts? This is a conversation that happens with whom and how.
Well, it starts with being proactive versus reactive. And I think that's what we saw a lot of post 2020, right? Post George Floyd. There have been some very public, horrific things that have come to the attention of the public and the world. And I think that people have been reacting, right? That's kind of our humanistic, animalistic instinct. How do we nip this in the bud? How do we take care of it? And sometimes that can end up as a performative action versus one that is actually significant and long standing and long lasting. And I used to think that, okay, if we could just, everybody wants to be seen, heard, loved, to feel valued. But people also need to be needed. And I think that if we can understand that people want to be needed not because of their skin color or their gender, people want to be needed because of their skills, because of what they bring to the table, because of their qualifications. And if we are just hell bent on checking the box, as you said, on getting the numbers, making the quotas, doing whatever the government is regulating, what we're going to do is we're going to end up with people who aren't feeling truly valued because they don't feel like they're needed for anything other than what they are versus who they are and what they can offer. And when people come into a situation feeling needed, feeling valued, they will deliver. They will go above and beyond to show you that you made the right choice, right? And so I think that, yeah, sure, there's some people who are like, yeah, I'll take that nice salary, I'll take that position, but are they really invested? Not really, because essentially they're being used for who they are, not for what they are, rather, versus who they are. And so I think this is about having kind of some come to Jesus moments with ourselves, about reality and about truth, and about how do we really value our fellow human beings by not placing labels on them, by not just putting them into categories, to say, oh, look at how diverse we are, look what a great company we are, look what a good CEO I am. No, we know that true diversity is also diversity of thought, diversity of ideas, diversity of experiences. And you know what? Yeah, people who have different backgrounds have different experiences. And not everything is about a certain GPA or, solely about one person's life experience. It's about this culmination of what we get to bring to the table to add. And that's the idea. We're supposed to be adding to a company, to an environment, to make it more productive, to make it, a more positive experience where people feel like they do belong. And I think we do also get caught up in thinking that belonging is solely the responsibility of the company. Well, there needs to be some personal responsibility in this equation too, where people have to decide, what am I going to give to be part of the collective, to be part of this environment? There's some really wonderful books out there. One is called The Coddling of the American Mind, which I was able to contribute to. And we talk about how some of the younger generation, and I think they're amazing, but they've been told how fragile they are by older generations. And that is one of the most, I think, horrific things we could do. It's one of the most tragic setups we could give to our fellow human beings, is to tell them that they're not capable or strong enough or to be able to handle a situation. And so that's, it's very easy to default and to blame someone else and to, blame society. And yes, have terrible things happened? Of course they have, but who's in charge? Who's in charge of your life? Who's in charge of your success? You are.
And I'm hearing a lot of really interesting pieces or components And I love the idea that it's not just about the company, or it's not just about the individual, it's about them working together as a community, because that's really a philosophy of mine. I felt like as a woman coming up through the ranks that a lot of the burden used to be put on the women. Well, why aren't you doing it differently? And then all of a sudden it occurred to me, well, this needs to be a reciprocal relationship, right? We need to, companies need to also provide these opportunities. So if you are, what advice might you give to maybe somebody in a company who maybe they feel like they're one of these people that's just to check the box, and they want to be able to change that idea, be more part of what's happening, and being able to demonstrate the difference that they could make? How would they want to, would there be a way that they might want to go about doing that? Or how can we start to think about maybe approaching this, either as companies or individuals?
Absolutely. And one of the things that I tell my clients, that I tell my audiences is this isn't hard work. This is heart work, right? And I know some people are like, "Ooh, that's a little ooey gooey and, out there." No, it's not esoteric. It's real. The heart is a little brain. It's actually our second brain. The heart thinks and feels and reasons independently. And if we can make the connection between our hearts and our minds and get people to care. And CARE is an acronym that we use within the Inversity methodology for conscious empathy, active listening, responsible reactions, and environmental awareness. And again, these are not two-way streets. This is a 6-lane highway. So it does take effort, it takes energy, but it takes elevating your awareness and your consciousness to be able to, when you apply that conscious empathy, not to be confused with sympathy. Sympathy is when you feel bad for someone. Oh, what a shame. And empathy is, putting yourself in someone else's shoes. Conscious empathy is empathy on steroids, where you ask at least 2 questions. What is it like for them, and how might that feel? And to be able to go into that deep place, which is sometimes uncomfortable, but here's the good news. Discomfort is temporary. But if you can do that, just every now and then, to see where someone else is coming from, whatever that coming from place is, whether they're part of the majority group or they're part of a marginalized group, to be able to have that ability to see someone else's scenario, that can change your heart, it can change your mind. And certainly this is really more about behavior than it is, changing your belief system, because I don't think anybody's belief system should be threatened. But we can still learn to value, to treat, to include one another, regardless of the differences that may be, because we're fellow human beings. And I think we get caught up. We've been told, we've been taught, we have learned to focus on the small things, focus on, who somebody votes for, who somebody loves, who somebody, prays to, versus this is a human being who's not just one-sided. We're not monoliths. We are multifaceted. I've had many conversations about, how do I describe myself? What's my ethnicity? And it's like, well, okay, I can give you a slew of things that make me up. I know what my bloodline is, but why does that matter when it's who I am versus just the color of my skin? But we've been told to focus on those things, and we're going to have to kind of break the chains of that, and that's what takes the heart work, right? That's what takes the heart work.
And by the way, I want to make sure that we share with people how they can reach you, Karith. So if you want to share that, how can people reach out to you? Because this is such an amazing conversation, right? And it's top of the mind for so many. So how can we reach you?
Absolutely. So fortunately, there are not too many Kariths out there in the world. Karith. My handles on LinkedIn, Instagram are at Karith Foster. And Inversity Solutions is the name of my company. INVERSITY Solutions with an S on the end.com. And I have a blog, I have a newsletter. I've got a cache of really wonderful programs, from conversation, guided conversations, to I do a lot of work with CEOs and people leads, who are really trying to get a handle on this whole diversity space. They've been told to do one thing for so long, and now they're like, wait a second, why isn't this working? Is there an alternative? And I get to be that. I get to be the answer to, let's do this in a really thoughtful, compassionate, and empathetic way, so that we are celebrating who we are and what we bring to the table, and we're having healthy conversations, not divisive ones.
And thank you for sharing that. And I'm wondering too, I'm thinking about some of the things that you shared for care, and one of them is active listening. And I think when you think even about emotional intelligence, even a lot of what you're talking about are skills that as leaders we need to be able to build anyway, right? I mean, not just for building community, but for building better workplaces and happier people. It seems to me that this is just good basic, information to incorporate, and the byproduct of it can be just this much more inclusive and environment. The other thing I wonder is this takes work, right? You have to be intentional,
Yes.
and I think it feels like as leaders, this is something that we have to prioritize, right? We have to set the culture. We have to make sure that everyone knows that this is important, and that's something that's really a passion of mine too, is impacting leaders. And so, what would you say to leaders of companies that, you know, how would you want someone to start this conversation? How might they demonstrate some of the skill set that we want to make sure that we get to out to our people?
Well, I think what you hit on earlier, Kimberly, was this is about raising people's EQs, right? Emotional quotient, and their BQs, behavioral quotient, without insulting their IQs. And the way that we do this is to get people to understand this isn't about quote unquote diversity. It really isn't. That's like some category, right? This is about communication. This is about leadership. This is about development. This is about personal development. This is about personal responsibility. And, the way that we get there is, yes, through example, through taking ownership of how you show up, how you treat people, how you treat yourself. And quite honestly, I think part of the reason we are struggling so much with this is because there are a lot of people who don't like themselves. Most people wake up in the morning, look in the mirror, first thing they say is something horrible, something that a complete stranger, if they said it to us, we'd be like, who raised you? Where did that come from? Right? We insult ourselves, and then we are expected to go out into the world and be kind and loving and gracious with other people. No. So we have to work from the inside out. That's part of the key to this. This has to be inside work. And so the more you develop yourself, I was reading a statistic about people who have really strong, healthy marriages. And one of the things that comes up repeatedly when people are asked, what do you do? How do you keep your marriage? My parents married 56 years last week. They say they work on themselves. They work on themselves. And that's what this is about, working on yourself so that you can be the best leader you can be, so that you can be an example, so that you can be that pillar for other people to, stand on, to support, because that is what leaders do. Leaders they delegate, they give commands, I guess, if you will. But they also are an example to the people that they're leading. And hopefully, what I have found is a very distinct difference between CEOs and middle management. And CEOs understand that it's about building other people up. People who tend to not do that, be in that space, and this is not all middle management. I don't mean to use hyperbole here, but it's like there's this fear, right? Someone's going to get more than I am. Someone's going to get ahead of me. And I think this is also why a lot of diversity and inclusion efforts do get thwarted, because of the people who are living in fear. Well, if that group gets more than I do, then what's going to happen to me? No, everybody wins if we get people coming to the ground on an equal playing field, being able to contribute. It just makes things better. It certainly makes the shareholders happier when you're more productive, because you've got a cohesive team who isn't caught up in the nonsense and the trivial aspects of, the things we're told to pay attention to that separate and divide us.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. And I love the idea of, that it could be fear based, right? That somehow we're going to be diminished or we're going to lose because of embracing this. Well, Karith, we could obviously talk, so much longer about this, and it's been wonderful having you and so awesome to hear your thoughts. And thank you for sharing all this. And Inversity Solutions. And remind us again, just quickly, where we can find you.
Absolutely. InversitySolutions.com at Karith Foster is my handle. And if I could just add one more thing, Kimberly, this is supposed to be fun. This is supposed to be engaging. This is not supposed to be daunting work where you go off in a corner and you beat yourself up or you feel guilty or shameful. That's not how this is supposed to work. We're supposed to be valuing ourselves and one another and elevating to a higher place of consciousness and inclusion.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. We've loved having you, and we'll look for more great things from everything that you're doing. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.